Ashe, ashe. Hey, Banga Lapia, Ashe, ashe. Banga Lapia, Ashe, ashe. Welcome, Banga Lapia, Ashe, ashe. Banga Lapia, Ashe, ashe. Ashe, ashe. Ashe, ashe. Banga Lapia, Ashe, ashe. Greetings. My name is Ubanga Hill, and I would like to make an offering to you, to us, to the community, to this gathering, to this seminar, circulation of our dollar. So this is a blessing, and I'm just going to light some sage and offer that smoke. And if you like sage and you do ceremony with sage, you take this in for self. We honor our ancestors. We bless this gathering, circulation of our dollar. Prosperity, ownership, energy, exchange. Mojuba fefeku, Mojuba fefeku, Mojuba fefeku, Mojuba fefeku, eku o, yente la sejuba ekungu, eku o, yente la sejuba ekungu, mojuba fefeku, mojuba fefeku, mojuba fefeku, mojuba fefeku, eku o, yente la sejuba ekungu, eku o, yente la sejuba ekungu, yente la sejuba ekungu, yente la sejuba ekungu. Here's what I know, being a commercial airline captain, it can be a 10th degree off course. America has not figured it out. Haven't figured out the issue. But let's talk about it on the show.
You know, not what they see on television or in music, or, you know, it's just another broadens, again, gives them an idea of a possibility. You can't be what you don't see, but also you can't accept what you don't see. You can't conceptualize as normal or what you don't see.
Legacy, what do you leave for the people that are coming up behind you. If you don't own it, it's not yours to leave. So generally what you end up leaving depends on how much you've earned through that which you have not owned. So if you can't necessarily own it, then, try to get equity in it.
2 locations, you can't be at 7 locations, you know what I mean? So you got to build a great infrastructure. You have to put our egos aside. And know that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room, right?
Hello guys, welcome to the second annual Circulation of Our Dollar event. Unfortunately, we are doing this virtually this year. Normally, we would be meeting you in person, but doing this virtually, we were able to have keynote speakers and guest speakers from all over join in on this conversation today. So today we're talking about money and ownership in the Black community and why it is so important to our community to have these discussions. So that's what this is today. It's a discussion. We are bringing together a group of people who will share not only their knowledge, but their own life experiences, their wisdoms, their passion, and their opinions about some of these topics. And we hope that in bringing together all of these people, that we will be able to then all get on one accord and take the next step together so that we can make a change that will benefit our great grandchildren. We have to have these discussions together. We have to be able to learn from one another and be open to receiving information so that we can make a change for our community, because that's what we desperately need in our nation right now. So with that being said, I am going to get started. I'm sorry. The last thing I want to say is everyone who's here today donated their time to bring you some information. And so please, 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 once this is over, go out, go find them, say thank you, go support their businesses, support their services, share their information. That's what today is all about, networking and discussion. So yes, let's get started. So we are gonna start with a quote by Summer Moore. It says, "The reason for both Black unemployment and absence of Black economic revolution is the lack of Black businesses," which is a problem. Part of the reason that there is a lack of Black business is because there's not enough money being recycled in the Black community. And today, with COVID, that crisis has just gotten worse. So COVID created a demand shock, a supply shock, and a financial shock to our nation. And so before COVID, $1 would circulate in the Asian community for 28 days. $1 would circulate in the Jewish community for 20 days. In the white community for 17 days. In the Hispanic community for a week. But in the Black community, $1 would only circulate for 6 hours. Now, I'm sure because of the pandemic that maybe that dollar circulates a little bit less than 6 hours now.
What does it mean to you to be able to circulate money amongst the Black and Brown community? And why do you think it's important for us to do so?
I do try to make an effort to, if I can do that first, if I can support the Black community first in the purchases I make, in the businesses I support, that's what I'd like to do first. It's funny because with a lot of the changes and developments, and seeing the broader culture accept and make efforts, make overtures towards supporting Black businesses, I have found even in some white businesses, trying to support Black businesses. So I went to the wine store and they had a whole selection of Black-owned wines, Black-owned vineyards that had produced these wines, and were trying to prominently feature them. So it doesn't feel as hard as it might have been, because we're growing everywhere. I mean, it's more hairdressers, but we're growing everywhere. But no, definitely, where it doesn't feel as hard, and I want to support. I would like to see the money stay in the community so that we can all build ourselves up. We see that in many other cultures, them keeping money, keeping business in their communities. And I think we have some way to go with that. There's been too many outside forces that prevent us from doing that. But with the advent of technology and some Google searching and some time, it's become increasingly easy to, let me get that, for instance, over the holidays for years, I used to buy popcorn tins for friends and family, and go online to the typical places. But I said this year, let me see if there are any Black-owned, popcorn. And I found an artisanal, Black-owned popcorn and snack company that I could buy directly from and ship to all my friends and family. So
we got to change the language from being Black to why it's important to circulate the resources in the American slave community. Why? Because money only creates more value as it changes hands. The other thing is that the dollar is in trouble. What we got to do is be willing to transfer those dollars into digital gold and then use the gold coin cryptocurrency as our new medium of exchange. Because this new cryptocurrency, it's decentralized. It's not controlled by the federal government. It really is influenced by we the people. And it's based upon the blockchain technology, and it allows everybody to participate in this process. So talking about the Black community, I'm talking about the American slave culture community. And we have to be willing to look at things differently. The dollars need to be transferred into digital gold, and we use gold coin as our medium of exchange that will raise the value in our communities overnight.
Money, the actual money, greenbacks, as we used to say back in the day, that tangible item is man-made. It's just a symbolic note, tender, legal, of exchange saying, okay, you said that's worth this amount, all right, I'm gonna pay that amount. But if we didn't have that physical dollar in whatever language, whatever country, we would still barter and exchange with each other. Oh yeah, you say that's worth that? Well, the thing that I've got is worth that. So let's exchange. Your value matches my value of this thing that is also now my currency, my money, my resources. So that dollar is very, very interesting. The physical, but now it's going more digital. Forget physical, right? Tamika, that makes me sound old. It's like, oh yeah, I remember it was green money. Now it's just digital money.
National Bureau of Economic Research determined that a peak in monthly economic activity occurred in the US economy in February 2020, marking the end of the longest recorded US expansion, which began in June 2009. From the most recent peak in the fourth quarter of 2019, the United States experienced 2 consecutive quarters of decline in GDP. It even recorded its steepest quarterly drop in economic output on record, a decrease of 9.1%. To put this in context for you guys, the GDP has never experienced a drop greater than 3% since the 1940s. And so 2020, as we all know, hit us hard, but it hit Black businesses harder. The GDP is down across the nation, but Black businesses are closing. COVID-19 shutdowns have pounded Black-owned businesses particularly hard. Research from the University of California shows that 41% of Black-owned businesses have been hurt compared to just 17% of white-owned businesses. And this is crazy. There's a quote here by Andre Perry, he's an author, that says, because a lot of Black business owners don't have the kind of equity due to structural racism, they have less of a cushion to withstand this particular moment in time. If Black businesses and individuals had the same type of cushion as their white counterparts, we would not be in this situation. The reality of the fact is that Blacks receive business loans at about half the rate of their white counterparts. And when we do receive a loan, it's at a higher interest rate. And so not only does our dollar only circulate in our community for 6 hours, but our businesses are closing, and through structural racism, we don't have the equity to stay open, and we can't even get loans at the same rate as our white brothers and sisters. And it's super, super crazy because although Black America makes up a small portion of the US population, our buying power was $1 trillion in 2018. It is now $2 trillion. So we have one of the largest buying powers in the world, one of the largest economies in the world. And yet we can't get the same rate on a loan.
See, everything that we need to be successful is all around us, just waiting on us to acknowledge it. Because see, I know our culture, we spend $1.25 trillion every year in everybody else's culture.
Black people, I heard today, we contribute $1.4 trillion, and it's supposed to go up in 4 or 5 years to 1.8 trillion. Yet we make up only 13% of the population, which is only about 40 million people. So that's a lot of money that we're giving away that we can have in our own communities. And I got tired of the concept of always having to go. I love nonprofit, I love the donations, but we're always asking for somebody. And that comes from a power of lacking power. Or my instance, we need to empower ourselves, put our pennies together, and start doing things on a bigger level.
Late 1800s, back to Freedmen's Bank, we had, Black America had their own bank that had millions of dollars in it at the end of the 1800s. And the government shut that bank down, and they took the money out of that bank. But they gave some money back, only to half of the account holders though. And to the half of the account holders who did get their money back, they only got 3/5 of their value of their accounts back. And so we had a Black-owned bank for freed slaves to build their wealth called Freeman's Bank. And we had millions of dollars in that bank. And our money was literally ripped out of our hands and not given back to us. It was our money. There's other opportunities to build wealth that were ripped out of our hands also. And this goes back to mortgage discrimination back in the 1930s when redlining became a thing. And so to put things in perspective, if redlining didn't occur and we were able, and Black America was able to purchase homes and get mortgages from the banks back in the early 1900s, those homes would have a ton of equity in them now that Black America would be able to use as a stepping stool. But again, that was taken from us. And then there's other systematic things that happened in our nation that caused us to be in the position we're in today. In 1921, we're about to come up on the 100th year anniversary of the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing, basically, is what it was. Black Wall Street was burned down. Over 600 businesses were destroyed. And we never got the money back from that. And so we never got the money back from slavery. And slavery is what built America's wealth. Slavery built the most wealth in America. We never got the money back from that. We will never get the lives lost from slavery, unfortunately. Our ancestors are not coming back. We never got the money back from Freeman's Bank. We can't go back 90 years and purchase a home now to get equity in that home. We can't build back up. We might be able to build another Black Wall Street, but it's not going to be the same as what was taken from us originally. I shouldn't say that. I hope it is the same, but we had it, and again, it was burned down. So this is why it's important to know all of these facts, because you can make your own opinion about it, but it's important to know the facts behind how the money is circulating in our community and why it circulates like that and how we got to this point. As of February 12th, 2020, there was $1.75 trillion in circulation. Some people don't know that the first bombs that ever fell on America fell on Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And actually, this was basically written out of the history books too, not to go off topic, but even I was researching in one of my school databases from one of the schools I graduated from, and you find like 2 articles on this topic. It's questionable. So again, we have $1.75 trillion worth of Federal Reserves in circulation right now. Black America has $2 trillion worth of economic buying power. We only get 1% of funding back to Black businesses, though. Healthy Black-owned businesses could be a critical component for closing the States Black and white wealth gap. So if we did get more money back into Black businesses, we could actually close this wealth gap. We can be the people to take the steps to get this done. Because the government, unfortunately, isn't working fast enough. It's important to note that right now, during the pandemic, 75% of initial PPP loans went to businesses in majority white census tracts. Between 2001 and 2018, the number of Black-owned financial institutions declined by over 50%. Today, there's only 21 Black-owned banks in the United States. And this is why ownership needs to be a priority. It's not a question, it's a need. And it's not a want, it's a necessity. The proportion of the United States under Black ownership has actually shrunk over the last 100 years. At the peak in 1910, African-American farmers made up around 14% of all US farmers. We owned 16 to 19 million acres of land. By 2012, Black Americans represented just 1.6% of farming community, owning 3.6 million acres of land. Another study shows a 98% decline in Black farmers between 1920 and 1997. This contrasts sharply with an increase in acres owned by white farmers over the same period. The lack of ownership is crucial to understanding the crippling economic disparity that has hollowed out the Black middle class and continues to plague Black America, making it harder to acquire wealth and pass it on to future generations. And this is what today is all about. It's about understanding what we need to do today to make sure that the future generations coming up, the generations that we will never meet, have a better opportunity than we have right now. And so to do this, we have to be conscious. We have to say, okay, well, if banks are only giving 1% of funding back to Black-owned businesses, why don't I seek out Black-owned businesses and give them my money? Why don't I shop with them? And it's actually possible to do this. The leader of the conscious consumerism movement, Maggie Anderson, actually bought Black for a whole year. The Kellogg Graduate School studies found that if middle-class African-American spending increase to 10% in the African-American community, we could also create 1 million jobs in our community, which this would have a beneficial effect on the GDP, bringing it back up, and also closing the wealth gap, and also eliminating America's debt. And so what happens is if the African-American community in America starts to get the support we need, it will benefit America as a whole. And so, again, we have to be the ones to say, okay, it's time to make this move and support one another.
I want to shift a little bit. Thank you. I want to shift a little bit to ownership and financial literacy. So really, I think we know that ownership is, as you said, a pathway to freedom, or a way to be able to have control of your own schedule and what you're doing. So why is ownership to you so important, or something that people should aspire to attain?
When you own it, you get to leave it. So it stays owned. That's why
Absolutely.
it's important. It's yours.
It builds generational
Yeah.
wealth.
Yeah, what's yours becomes ours, you know? And that's important. And it's great, you know, it's a great example when I think a child sees, you know, his mother or her father, you know, bring them to work, and where they're bringing them is actually theirs. You know, and I've seen, and that's funny because I've seen posts of, you know, your daughter. Trust me, she's well aware that what's yours is hers. Because she owns this, she owns Seasoned Gives when she's there. It's you know, and it's not like, but she's so comfortable in it. You know, she reads, she dances, she studies. That's what ownership is.
It's planting those seeds for our young ones.
Yeah.
You know, planting those seeds and watching them grow, watering them every day. So.
Basically, what we're talking about is group economics. And so group economics is one group of people who agree to actively and consciously pursue a common economic interest to sustain and secure themselves. We can take a look at the Jewish community, the Asian community, the Italian community. They've been practicing these principles for ages. And so it's our turn now. This is what a quote by Mrs. Dubois says. And so how group economics works is we start a Black-owned business, we hire Black employees, we then shop Black business, and so the money just circulates. As a consumer, I go to a Black-owned business, I give them my money. They pay their Black employees. When their Black employees get off of work and they need dog food before they go home, they find a Black-owned puppy shop and they go buy dog food. And, you know, one hand washes the other. And so we really need to pay attention to where we are spending our money, not only because we can make a huge difference in America, but yeah, that is why. But because also when you are aware of who you're giving your money to, those people can then turn around and help build up your community. They can put better schools in the community. They can get the roads paved. They can elect the right officials or fund the right officials to run for office. And so a lot of it comes down to money. According to the US Census of 2012, there are 18,362 firms in Ulster County, New York, and only 1,793 are minority owned. Now that doesn't say, it doesn't go into detail to explain if that means they're Black owned or what. It just says minority owned. And so that means that there are 16,000 white owned businesses in just Ulster County and about 2,000 minority owned businesses. So let's seek out those businesses. Let's give them the support that they need, because again, the PPP loans went out to the white businesses first, honestly. And so these minority owned businesses, they're who need our help right now.
I'm reading a book. I'm in the process of reading a book, and it talks a lot about our psychology as a society. It's called The Conversation, and it's about it's by a gentleman, Robert Livingston. how seeking and speaking the truth about racism can radically transform individuals and organizations. And he delves a lot into the psychology of how we're willing to give, like in your example, Tamika, about big business, how we're willing to give chances, and how the psychology of how we don't give those chances to Black businesses, about how someone who's messing up and is white is given many chances, and someone who is Black and messing up is given a limited number of chances, but almost more than someone who is Black and excelling, even, because they're given no chances. They're given, the one highly competent, they're given no chances. You mess up and it's a whole, we got to tear the whole thing down. Because there's the psychology of having to be better than that person across from you. So like, if you know that you're better than them, well, I'm giving them a chance. Look at them trying to do business. But then when it's somebody who is excelling and comes to you with excellence, then it is, oh, yeah, you messed up. We got to tear the whole thing down now. Because you recognize the excellence, but you recognize the mistake, but then, there's McDonald's. And there is, it is such a factory of, it's almost not a comparison because it's such a factory of where nothing has any real value there except for to, keep you from starving in that moment. That it's not worth anything to throw this out, to throw out those fries and get some new ones, because they've managed the profit margin. The what it costs for them to do that is down to fractions of pennies. Overall, given how much that of this stuff that they're pumping out into the society. So yes, the giving of grace, the realizing the work that it took to get into this, the realization of scale, the not indicting, I'll just leave it at the giving of grace, because it's going to take time to build our own community, our own standards of business and of community. What I wouldn't give to have more information about how Black Wall Street worked. How did that work? How did the banks work? How did the relationships work? How did the schools work? How did the community work together? Were they upholding the traditional standards, or did they have their own? Was there trade and barter wrapped up in, in business? Was there grace given? Or was it just like all up here, excellent, standard, like hold the line? Some of all of that, some of the strictness that we hold ourselves to, comes from survival skills. It comes from reaction to perceived threat. And that threat can manifest itself, psychologically. It can manifest itself generationally. I mean, we know this when we talk about white society, about proper nutrition and keeping a pregnant woman, keeping her calm and relaxed. And we know about trauma in the body, held in the body, mothers passing it on to their daughters, fathers passing it on to their sons. And somehow when it comes to us, and that child is sitting in a school and, and he's acting out a bit, it's all his pathology. It is all his pathology is because he doesn't want, it's because he doesn't appreciate, it's because he's not good enough. And then everything that he's going to receive from everyone around him, the structure around him to tell him that. And then he grows into an adult who has a child who has that trauma, and that trauma is passed on to this child. And then, and then the cycle continues. And I hear this a lot with some of the people I know who work in schools who are just, oh, this child seems so messed up, comes from this messed up family. I remember that their mother was, had this hard time. And it's just like, so if you know that this child had a hard upbringing and was born into a family that had a hard time, can you bend a little? Can you give a little space for them to succeed? Or do you have to cut it like time's up? This is how much time you have to complete your test. This is how much, this is the grade that you're gonna get. This done, oh, you failed, sorry. So yeah, just it keeps coming back to that grace. It keeps coming back to understanding the psychology and how much of this stuff we've internalized, and I'm trying to correct some of the stuff that I've perpetuated. I'm trying not to pass on that twice as good to my kids. You're good enough. You're good the way you are.
That empathy.
Rambled a whole lot there.
No, that was beautiful. It's exactly what we need to hear. The realness. This is real. Nobody is perfect. Everybody deserves empathy, no matter what situation you're in, whether you're homeless, whether you're dealing drugs, whether you're a massage therapist, a business owner, a manufacturer, working for Best Buy, it doesn't matter. Everybody deserves empathy and understanding for the situation that they're in. And
we are Americans. We are descendants of American slaves. North America bred slaves. She brought folks here from Africa by force, and during the Middle Passage, coming over here, they cut all of that off. And once they got over here, they took 30 of them and began to repopulate. These people were brought here by force, not by choice. That makes them non-immigrants. You could normally, immigrants that come here, they come here willingly, they're immigrants. But those that are brought here by force, they're non-immigrants. And then what they did to that group in North America, they bred them. Slavery was a business. They created American slaves. As soon as that baby popped out, they took that baby and bred that baby to be ignorant of really who she was. Put them next to cattle. Let them think that they were animals. Moral, non-moral America did that. This country was a moral nation. They had laws. The laws was dysfunctional. That you can be able to breed people to be slaves. But it was lucrative. It was a business. It was big business. Slavery was the foundation of North America. It still is to this day. It was the economic engine. It created millionaires. And all that money flowed from Mississippi and those 7 southern states, got washed through Wall Street. It went from blood money to white money and back over to Liverpool, England, London, back to the rest of the world. But the culture that they bred here, the descendants of slaves are still here. Yet active, but in other people's eyesight, invisible. And part of our issue, we have to deal with it. We have to deal with it. We got to understand who we are. We've been called slaves, colored, Negro, Black, African American. Why so many name changes? Normally it takes an act of Congress, my sister, to change a name. Those 55, those senators, today, they're fighting over the bills to get the 1.3 trillion or 1.2 trillion to get folks checked. Normally it's an act of Congress to change anything in this country. But we change our name every 25 years. Houston, we have a problem. Hello, we got an issue. And so we're still dealing with the after effect of American slavery. Lincoln really didn't address it. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which really has no power. That's American sign emancipation, a proclamation. But if you don't have a congressional backing behind it, giving it teeth, and it should have been for the American slave culture, not black, American slave. Black is a color, it's a description, it's an adjective, it's not culture, it's not a nationality, it's not a race, it's not a religion, it's a color. There is no standing with the word black. Look in the Black Law Dictionary. See, we're going to have to be willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn. We're ignorant, some of us. We're lacking in knowledge. I woke up thinking this morning, and I might as well put it on the show, being a commercial airline pilot for American Airlines, the largest airliner in the world. So I look at things, I'm process oriented. I have to be. I fly by the numbers. I have to do everything decently and in order. You know, somebody just had an engine failure. I ain't gonna put the company name out here. But those guys, I knew exactly what they were doing. And they was able to bring it around, get the airplane on the ground. They were up there following an engine failure, a catastrophic engine failure checklist, and they followed it to the letter. They brought everybody back around and get on the ground. It's the same process. Our group, we don't know we haven't asked the right questions, my sister. There's 7 questions you got to get answered. Do you know what the 7 questions are?
Yeah, tell us.
7 questions that you got to get answered. Our group have not asked the right questions. And if you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the answer. I heard where it says, ask and it shall be given unto you. Seek, you shall find, knock and the door shall be open. Our group haven't asked questions. So I'm going to give them to you. First question that you've got to get answered. And it's got 5 parts to it. Who are you? B part of the question, what are you? D part of the question, what should you be becoming? E part of the question, what should you be doing as you walk on the planet? What's my purpose for existence? Our group haven't got that one question answered. Second question that you got to get answered. Where am I visibly positioned in American society, socially, politically, and economically? And you cannot be guessing. Before I take that jet flying, I got to know my longitude and latitude. It's critical because if I don't know my starting point, sis, not only am I in trouble, everybody get on board jet gonna have an issue. Third question you got to get answered. Once you've identified where you are, if you don't change, where could you potentially wind up? Because if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep producing the same result. And the definition of insanity, madness, crazy, or plain old stupidity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different outcome. Fourth question that you got to get answered. If you don't like where you're going to wind up, where do we need to be? What's our new destination? B part of the question, what vehicle do we use to get there? What's the flight plan? What's the life plan? How long will it take? Fifth question, how did we get in the present predicament that we be in today? Because not knowing how you got to where you are today, a lesson not learned, soon repeated until you learn it. We haven't gotten that question answered as a group collectively. Personally, I've got it answered. I have. Sixth question, if you ain't flying the jet or captain of the ship or captain of your life or driving the process, who is, and where they currently taking you. You got to know that one. The B part of the question, why am I still on board this vehicle? Why I'm still a part of this process? C part of the question, how do I get off? I got to get off this vehicle. I don't like where it's going. And then the seventh question that's got to be answered. Are you now willing? Are you now ready to pay the cost to get to your new destination? It's just that simple. Our group haven't asked the right questions.
What are some challenges that you've noticed, even in advocacy or even through COVID? You had mentioned the Paycheck Protection Program. What are some challenges that you've noticed that are directly affecting the community of color?
Honestly, a lot of challenges that are quote unquote, during COVID or post-COVID are actually for us pre-COVID. So I don't feel like anything that, I would say would be new to us. The challenges we face were only magnified, highlighted, brought to maybe the if not at least the national awareness, maybe even the global, because what happened that exposed all this when it happened. A lot of people got to see everything else that was already happening. So whether it be the social aspect of what we go through as Black people with Black businesses, that was already going on, and COVID was like, well, everybody's at home seeing it, so access to capital, access to information, which is sometimes more of a resource than capital, because we need to get plugged into the information flow that is currency, that is energy. We're always playing catch up, and that was something that really became obvious. Sometimes our own disconnectivity from one another, it can be a factor. We have to be better about the human capital that goes into building our businesses too. That's a resource that gets overlooked because we're so busy chasing what we understand is capital, but information is capital. Time is capital, so, and of course, I think people are the number one resource. So human capital is everything to what we try to do as an organization. So those things, as I said, were already kind of top of mind for us in our communities. So if anything, for us, it just intensified.
So what's the biggest challenge that either you had to face or you feel that entrepreneurs of color have to face?
Well, where do we start there? I think the biggest thing has to be understanding what commitment is. You have to know that this is not going to be easy. And that's above and beyond the actual schooling that you'll have to put yourself through. Certain instances where I'm at, you have to get licensing. Obviously, other entrepreneurial roles, you still have to go out there and pay your dues. You have to deal with manufacturers and distribution. And this person said they can do this, they can. The molds are broke, and so forth and so on, right? So your level of commitment has to be at an all-time high. Your optimism has to be. You have to create that, and you can't look at. I was reminded of something that said a prophet. I'm paraphrasing, ain't even welcome in his own home. So if they're saying it from the good book, that people who have good words are going to be rejected or dismissed from people that love you and know you, you might as well don't even worry about that part of it. So you must have a thick skin, so to speak. I think the biggest problem that holds us back is I think sometimes we don't even know that we're done. And what I mean that is A lot of people read, but there's also a big notion of people not wanting to read a lot. And sometimes when you don't read, you don't even know what you don't know. And so this thirst for knowledge doesn't seem to be as strong all the time. It's good enough to get by and to laugh and he and ha, but you have to always pursue knowledge to want to get there, and not just useless knowledge. It has to be knowledge that's going to be able to be productive. Saying that, you going to trivia is one thing, but you're trying to move and motivate people's lives. And I think the other thing, obviously, is the financial part. But I think even more than that is the education part. You have to be able to educate and motivate and get people to believe. And that is the hardest thing to do when people, I think people in general, but it seems like Black people, the crabs in the barrel. So what are you talking about? You ain't never done that. And who you think you gonna be and why? And I'm like, I ain't dismissed you when you wanted to be a cheerleader, if you wanted to be the band director. So why you want to dismiss what I got going on? So I think education holds us back, both internally and also as far as getting the message across to the people. But I think probably the number one after all of that is you got to get started. There's a whole bunch of people sitting around talking about what coulda, shoulda, and I would have did this. And I think my major motivation for myself personally was 20-some years ago, hey, well, we too young, we running around. Like, well, what about now? Well, we too old now. No, you ain't taking my life. You ain't going, I ain't say you took it. I'm not going to give my energy to waiting on you then, and now you too old. So we got to get started. We got to understand that the money that we spend is not a loss, but it's an investment. And we don't approach it as such. We see it as, I can't let go of this money, but I'm going to give me a chicken sandwich. Now, wait a minute. You got to put an investment in. If you want something in, you got to put something. You want something back, you got to put something in. And I think that we don't always want to invest. And obviously, with our money being what it is, we were fearful. And so fear drives a lot of it, lack of education. And, I think sometimes not really thinking along these lines. You have to be thinking, what can I improve? How can I improve my life? What can I do better at my job? You never know when the next invention, next widget in between. And so we don't think like this. So if you're not thinking like this, then you can never be a business person. We're great consumers, and we produce fashions and trends, but we're not producing anything that's going to be tangible. And so it's hard, I guess, as a business person to want to get into business if you don't have a business idea, because business is based on products and service. And so if we're not thinking like that, then we're not creating anything, then what do we do? This is, what do we do? So self-starting is one of the biggest things. Going and finding a mentor will be, I don't know, the biggest thing, the hurdle, but that's the next thing you need to do, because you can't do it by yourself. Unless you're just gonna get you and there's nothing wrong with it. You can start off and get you a mom and pop store. That's fine. But if you're trying to do something bigger than that, then you're gonna need more help than that. And even that.
Do you ever think that there'll be another Black Wall Street? And if so, what do you think it would make and need to be able to sustain?
I hope that there will be. I really hope that there could be. I'm concerned about the forces that stand against that. I don't think it is all up to us. We can take opportunities to, surely with, the availability of reaching out and connecting online, we could build towards that. But something that always keeps coming back to me when I think about, like, could we get the cooperation from larger society to allow that to happen, is I think about hair care. I think about how the government supported in loans and financial ways for one group of people to break into the Black hair care market to be able to own shops, to be able to sell, products. It didn't happen by accident. They just didn't luck into this business. They were given financial incentive for something as basic as hair care. And then I saw just recently, I believe 2 young Black women tried to start their own hair care, their own hair supply and shop, but the market is so locked up in this other culture that they couldn't get supplies. They couldn't count on getting regular shipments of what folks were looking for. It was so difficult for them because it has become a walled garden that they're locked out of the market. So things like that give me pause. Young people give me hope, but seeing the structural that are set up that go on way, way, way behind the curtain, give me pause about ever seeing that get built up to that extent again. I hope so.
I'm in total agreement with you. But again, unity and support of each other. I really think that, and understanding that, Black entrepreneurs, we're going to make mistakes. We're not going to be perfect. And we have a unique set of challenges that many white folks don't have. That's the reality. So, just us having understanding for us and other people understanding for us that, there are going to be unique challenges and there's going to be mistakes along the way, but we're going to continue to support and uplift each other. I think that's a huge piece of it.
I think there are going to be a lot of streets that are Black, and we have the walls. I don't think there's going to be one. I think, and it's our goal, I guess, in a lot of ways as an organization. With so many chambers and groups and organizations in this space, we'll probably have a lot of streets. Because that'll mean we're building up our communities and we're succeeding in the effort we're doing collectively. If there is a community, a community is a bunch of streets. It's this street, that street crosses over that street. So if we have Black businesses and Black homeowners and Black organizations and Black customers, that's Black Wall Street to me. Why should we stop at one? We need another one because we got so many businesses that they can't all possibly fit on one street. So we're gonna need another street, where the walls Black. We got a lot of streets. And we need to have as many as possible as we can in our communities. I think the larger cities have more of an opportunity to have, larger streets per se, but we can't be satisfied with just having. We can have that mentality if every street in the community that we're in has that Black Wall Street mentality. And we should have a lot of Black Wall Streets.
Whatever that you bind on earth should be bound in heaven. Whatever you sow, you shall reap. That's a law. So I said, okay, I want the name slave. First off, the name is worth $106 trillion US. Because that's what slavery was all about. They didn't calculate the number. 106 trillion. See, everybody's running from that name. I love the name slave. And now that I have defined it, would you like to know what the name really means? Yeah. The letter S means we're saved, sanctified, set apart. We're special. We're successful. The letter L means we're leaders. We're learners. We're lovers. Love is about giving. The letter A means we're Americans. We're awesome. We're anointed. We're appointed. We're achievers. We are admired. Folks admire our culture. Let us go play basketball. fly by, Duncan. Wow. They admire our culture. We have a love-hate relationship here in America. But you know what? Our culture has made this country what it is today. And continue. The letter V. It means that we are vital. We're vivacious. We're victorious. And we have our culture. We have the mindset. We're in it to win it. Our culture has gone through so much. And still here today kicking butt. Still loving on this country. Why? Because we're Americans. We are descendants of American-bred slaves. We can't go back to Africa. I wasn't born in Africa. We can't go back to these other places. This is our home. And by the way, the letter E means we're excellent. We're exceptional. We're super. We are excited. Those are the qualities of the 21st century slave culture. It's been documented. So I'm really glad that you are getting the word out because I own human aid slaves. I represent all those qualities. What one group of people have tried to do, make it bad for us to be shamed and ignorant of, no. We have flipped the script. People are excited now that runs my circle because they're thinking different. They're speaking different. And they're acting. So it's exciting. It's one of the greatest times to be alive. I tell people, look only at what you see keeps you from becoming who you can be. We have to be the change. Nobody's going to help our culture but us. And I'm laser focused. Matter of fact, I put stuff out on the internet. The president of the United States here just got back to me here yesterday. They said, G, the president used your word, laser focus. That's my word. I put that on laser focus. Would you really like to know what laser focus means? It means love American slaves, equality, and righteousness. That's what laser means. Love, and some folks, they don't have to love us like American slaves, equality, and righteousness. And the word focus, it means follow one course until successful, economically determined. Laser focused. Now, having said all that, we now got the educational piece down. Now we can be able to begin work on wealth.
This directory, it is called More Business Direct, and you can go there if you are a Black-owned business, or if you know of one, you can go there and put their information in, and that way people know, okay, where can I go to spend my money? Okay. And so, again, this is important because not only does it affect our communities, not only does it affect our politics, not only has it affected our lives, Black America has literally lost dozens of lives because we're not at the same level when it comes to wealth and equity. And so should all try to be aware of how we spend our money, where we spend our money, and where the money is going to. Because if we tune into that information, we can make a massive shift. And I want to thank you guys all for your time today. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of the weekend. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you. appreciate being a part of this conference, this series, this network. Again, my name is Bobby Hill, and website and social media. I look forward to meeting everyone.